Can you imagine the sound of thousands of footsteps moving in silence, boots pressing dust into the earth, shields brushing against armor, the weight of fear thick in the air? The Valley of Elah was quiet that morning, but it was not peace. It was the stillness that comes before something the world will never forget. But there was something in that moment almost no one noticed. Something God had already set in motion long before the first shout echoed across the hills. A shepherd boy, far from this valley, was tuning his harp. Each string sang a note that heaven could hear, a melody written not for music, but for destiny. No soldier knew his name. No trumpet had ever called him to war. Yet, before the armies took their positions, before Goliath roared his first challenge, God had already chosen the one who would silence the giant. In those days, fear moved quietly through the camp of Israel. King Saul, once bold, once certain, sat beneath the royal tent, his eyes dark with doubt. Across the valley, the Philistines had pitched their camp, their banners fluttering like black wings in the desert wind. Each morning, as the mist lifted, a figure stepped forward from their line. He was a mountain of a man, covered in bronze from head to foot. His voice rolled like thunder across the hills. "Send me a man! Let him come down to fight me!" No one moved. No one answered. Even the bravest warriors looked away. For 40 days the challenge echoed, and for 40 nights the people of God felt small. The sound of faith grew faint. Hope thinned like smoke over dying coals, and in the hearts of men the question began to whisper, "Has God left us?" But in the hills of Bethlehem, among sheep and stones, a boy named David was learning a different language, the quiet language of trust. When wolves came, he stood his ground. When loneliness crept in, he sang. And each time his fingers touched the strings, heaven listened. Faith was being forged when no one was watching. If you love walking through the great moments of Scripture as if you were there, feeling the wind, hearing the echoes of faith, subscribe now and journey with me. The sound of the trumpets is about to break the silence, and you don't want to miss what happens when courage finally speaks. The sun rose slow and heavy over the valley. Its light crawled across the rocks, painting them gold and red. Dust hung in the air like a veil, softening the outlines of tents and spears. You could smell metal, iron, and sweat, and a faint sweetness of crushed grass beneath hundreds of sandals. Birds circled high above, but even they seemed cautious, afraid to break the silence. A distant clang of armor, a muffled cough, a prayer whispered under breath. Every sound mattered. And then a roar, deep, confident, terrifying. Goliath of Gath stepped forward again, the ground trembling beneath his steps. He lifted his spear, its head gleaming like a captured sunbeam. "Send me a man!" The echo rolled through the valley and up toward Bethlehem, where a shepherd looked up from his flock, hearing a sound he could not yet name. A calling was traveling on the wind. Something divine was unfolding, unseen but unstoppable. The valley had become a rhythm of dread. Morning, the giant roared. Evening, the people hid. Day after day, courage slipped further away, and hope fell silent beneath the echo of fear. Then came a boy with bread in his hands and faith in his heart. David had been sent only to bring food, loaves and roasted grain for his brothers, and a word of peace from his father, Jesse. The air smelled of dust and iron. Soldiers muttered around small fires, sharpening blades they no longer believed in. He moved among them quietly, greeting each one with the warmth of someone untouched by the weight of war. He asked questions, not out of arrogance, but of wonder. What is happening here? Why does no one fight him? A soldier laughed bitterly, because he cannot be beaten. He pointed toward the valley. Look for yourself. And David looked. Across the dry ravine stood Goliath, a tower of bronze shimmering in the sun. Every movement of his armor clanged like thunder. He was mocking Israel, mocking God, and every word seemed to pierce the hearts of those who listened. David's breath caught. It wasn't fear, it was anger. Holy, burning, righteous anger. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine," he said softly, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The word spread like sparks in dry grass. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to gasps. The boy had said what no man dared to say aloud. But his brothers were not impressed. "Go back to your sheep," Eliab snapped. "This is not a place for children." David turned, his eyes steady. "I was keeping my father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came to take one from the flock, I went after it. I struck it down and rescued the sheep from its mouth. The same God who delivered me from them will deliver me from this Philistine." For a moment, silence. Then laughter, uneasy, mocking, dismissive. But above the laughter, something unseen stirred. The same spirit that had once chosen David in secret now stood beside him in the open. The news reached Saul's tent before David did. They said, "A boy wishes to fight Goliath." The king frowned, weariness deep in his eyes. "Bring him." When David entered, Saul saw youth, not power. Skin still unscarred by war, eyes too calm for battle. "Son," Saul said gently, "you are not able to fight this Philistine. You are but a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David spoke, and the tent seemed to grow quiet. "Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God." He paused, his voice low but steady. "The Lord who rescued me then will rescue me now." Saul looked at him long and deep, the way a man looks when he remembers what faith used to feel like. And slowly he nodded. "Go," he said, "and the Lord be with you." The king offered his armor, but when David tried it, the metal swallowed him. It was too heavy, too foreign, too man-made. He removed it piece by piece. "I cannot go in these," he said. "I have not tested them." He stepped into the sunlight, wearing only his tunic, his sling, and the invisible strength of God. The valley fell quiet as he walked toward the brook. The water was clear, running over smooth stones shaped by time. He knelt, letting the coolness wash over his fingers, and chose five small stones, enough for a shepherd, too few for an army. He placed them in his pouch. The sling hung loosely at his side. The wind shifted. A hawk cried in the distance. And in that moment, the sound of Goliath's laughter rolled down the hill like thunder.
Goliath stepped forward, his armor-bearer straining to keep up. The Philistine's voice shook the air. "Am I a dog," he shouted, "that you come to me with sticks?" David didn't flinch. He walked closer, each step deliberate, steady, unafraid. Around him, the Israelite army watched in stunned silence. Mothers, sons, and fathers, every heart waiting, every prayer trembling on their lips. The wind carried the smell of sweat and bronze. The giant's spear gleamed like lightning bolt caught in daylight. The ground vibrated beneath his steps. Dust swirled. And then a sound, soft, steady, rhythmic. Leather sliding through calloused hands. David's hand reached into the pouch. One stone, smooth, cold, perfect. He raised his eyes and spoke words that cut through time. "You come to me with sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Goliath sneered. The crowd held its breath. The distance between them vanished in an instant. The sling spun, once, twice, 3 times. The air hissed. The stone flew, a heartbeat of silence. Then impact, a sound like thunder meeting flesh. The giant froze. His eyes widened. The mountain fell. For a moment, everything stood still. No sound, no movement, only the echo of God's power lingering in the dust. Then the roar. From the hills of Israel, from every trembling heart, faith burst into victory. Men who had hidden now ran forward, shouting, weeping, believing again. David stood over the fallen warrior, chest rising with heavy breaths. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the valley in gold. He lifted his face to heaven, and though no one could hear it, the song had already begun. Can you feel what they felt? The fear before faith, the doubt before deliverance, the trembling before triumph. We all face giants, not always of flesh, but of fear. They roar in the valleys of our hearts, telling us we are too small, too weak, too late. But faith is not the absence of fear. It is the courage to walk forward anyway, believing that God has already chosen the ending. And sometimes, all He asks of us is to pick up one small stone. For a long time, no one moved. The valley was still, heavy with dust and disbelief. Goliath's shadow, once enormous, lay quiet upon the earth. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if heaven itself were holding its breath. Then, slowly, the echo began. One voice cried out, then another, a wave of astonished faith breaking across the hills. What moments ago had been terror now turned to thunderous praise. Israel was alive again. David stood alone at the center of it all, a shepherd surrounded by soldiers, a boy standing where kings had feared to tread. The sling hung at his side, the stone nowhere to be seen, but the power that had guided its flight still filled the air, invisible yet undeniable. He looked down at the fallen warrior. This was not victory by strength. It was not precision or luck or skill. It was obedience, pure, simple, fearless obedience. And in that silence, David understood something few ever see so clearly. The battle had not been won when the stone flew, but when he chose to step forward. The miracle didn't begin in the valley. It began on the hillside, when a young shepherd believed that God's faithfulness was bigger than fear. It began when he said, "The Lord will deliver me," and heaven answered. The armies of Israel surged forward, chasing the Philistines out of the valley. The sound of battle faded into the hills, leaving only echoes and the scent of dust and sweat and something else, hope reborn. As the sun began to sink, David climbed a small ridge overlooking the field. The sky burned with red and gold, and the evening wind brushed against his face. He lifted his eyes and whispered a quiet song, not of triumph, but of thanks. No crown, no glory, just gratitude.
That night, the camp was filled with celebration. Men who had forgotten how to smile laughed again. Fires flickered like stars fallen to the ground. And above it all, the youngest among them sat in silence, staring into the flames. He thought about what had just happened. The giant had fallen, yes, but the real battle had been inside the hearts of men. Fear had ruled them long before the Philistine did. And when faith took its place, everything changed. Sometimes, the greatest giants aren't the ones before us, but the ones within us. The doubts, the voices that whisper, "You can't." And that's why God chose a boy, not a soldier. Because strength without faith cannot stand. But faith, even in the smallest heart, can move mountains. Can you feel it? The shift that happens when fear gives way to trust. When you stop asking if God will move and start walking as though He already has. Maybe your own miracle begins before you see the path, when you choose to take the step. When you decide that obedience is greater than certainty, and that what's unseen is stronger than what stands before you, that's the heart of this story. The sling, the stone, the fall, they are not the miracle. The miracle is faith that acts while fear is still speaking. So when your valley feels vast, when the voices mock your hope, remember David. Remember the sound of one step echoing in a valley of fear, and the silence that followed when God answered. In the next story, we'll witness what happened when a prophet's faith called down fire from heaven. A moment when heaven touched earth and everything changed. Which part of this story touched you the most? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe and share this story. Someone out there might need to be reminded that God still makes a way. May the same God who opened seas and tore down walls strengthen your faith today. May He give you courage and hope for whatever lies ahead. See you in the next story. May the Lord walk with you.